Today we will discuss brain in general. And first we will see what is the nerve system and what is the part. First we will have the system that is the nerve system, and it is divided into two parts: central nerve system and peripheral nerve system. If you want to divide again, then central nervous system is divided into two parts, that is the brain and spinal cord. We can see here, and we can see also that brain and spinal cord that composed of central nervous system. It means brain and spinal cord is the important part of the central nervous system. These are parts they dominant and organize everything in our body. Now peripheral nerve system, there are two types of nerves, that is the motor or afferent nerve or the sensory or the afferent nerve. Motor nerves means the order or command that is given to the organ and given from the brain. It means the brain gives some information towards to the organ that is carried by the nerves, that is the afferent nerves. And the information from the organ to carried to the brain, towards to the brain, that nerves are called sensory or afferent nerve. Again, motor nerve or motor system is again divided into two parts: SNS and ANS, autonomic nerve system and somatic nerve system. Autonomic Autonomous nervous system is again divided into two systems, that is the sympathetic system and the parasympathetic system. Sorry. Cell structure of the brain. Sorry. Brain is made up of two types of cells, that is neurons, and we have studies about neurons earlier. And second name of the cell is the glial cells, and we also call neuroglia or the glia. Neurons is responsible for the sending and receiving nerve impulses or signals. So everybody knows about that it carry information towards to the brain, and from the brain it will also carry the information or the order or the command towards to the specific type of the organ or the part of the body. Glial cells are non-neuronal cells that provide support and nutrition, maintain homeostasis of the brain, and form myelin sheet and facilitate signal transmission in the nerve system. What is the important function of the glial cell? First is nutrition and support, myelin sheet formation, and it will facilitate signal transmission in nerve system. So with these glial cells, the information on all the transmission will carry out very, very easily. Now we'll discuss meninges, and it also discussed we earlier. Brain is housed inside the bony covering called the cranium. Everybody know cranium is part that is outer side of the brain, that is composed of the some bony structures, that is the cranium, and inside the cranium there is a brain. The cranium protects the brain from injury. Together, the cranium and bones that protect the face are called the skull. And skull is not only part of the cranium. Skull is not the only part of the cranium. It is composed of the facial skeleton and our cranium. You will see a skull. It means there are two parts of the bone. one that is facing, that is covered our face, that is the facial skeleton, and one bone, another bone that is covered our brain, that is another bone that is called cranium. So cranium and facial skeleton both make up the skull. Remember it. Between the skull and brain is the meninges. So everywhere is covering. If we see organ in our body, there are so many organs in our body and many are covered by some layers. In stomach we can see there are peritoneum, and if we see kidney there are some layers coverings, renal fascia, and if you will see lung, so there are again some layers, there is pleura, and if you will see heart there is again pericardium. So very important organs are covered by some sheets that are named accordingly. If you see the brain, then there are covering, layering about all the parts of the brain that we call meninges. And same condition in spinal cord, that also the same covering is has also available around the spinal cord also. So they also called meninges. And the pattern of arrangement also similar in both sides. Meninges, which consist of three layers of the tissue that cover and protect the brain and spinal cord. Then what is the important function? Cover and protection. Protection is the most important function of these layers. From the outermost layer inward, they are how they are arranged. As outermost layer is durameter, and inside there is arachnoid, and very inside and attached to the brain there is diameter. So these are meninges. So durameter in the brain, durameter is made up of two layers. This is called periosteum, and the inner side is the dura. The two special folds of the dura in the brain are called the phalanx and tentorium. So the two layers of the durameter is called phalanx and tentorium. Phalanx separates the right and left half of the brain, and tentorium separates the upper and lower part of the brain. So there is two type of fold that separate right and left, and sorry, upper and lower part of the brain. Arachnoid, it is the second layer, and this membrane is very thin and delicate and covers the entire brain. There is a space between the durameter and arachnoid, and this is called subdural space. And the arachnoid is made up of delicate elastic tissues and blood vessels of varying size. Now pyometer is the innermost layer that is attached to the brain also, and pyometer has many blood vessels that reach deep into the surface of the brain because it attached in innermost layer and attached to the brain. So whatever blood capillaries or anything else that will cover the brain's outer portion also. Pyometer has many blood vessels that reach deep into the surface of the brain. Pya, which cover the entire surface of the brain, follows the folds of the brain. The major artery supplying the brain provides pya with its blood vessels. The space that separates the arachnoid and pya is called the subarachnoid space. It is within this area that cerebrospinal fluid flows. So subarachnoid space between the space between the pyometer and the arachnoid space. This is the space there is CSF flowing. What is the CSF? CSF is a fluid that is found within the brain and surround the brain, and it is also found in the spinal cord also. It is a clear and watery substance that helps to cushion the brain and spinal cord from the injury. The fluid circulates through channels around the spinal cord and the brain, constantly being absorbed and replenished. It is circulate and it is also absorbed. Replenished means whatever matter is reabsorbed and again that amount of fluid is formed again. It is within hollow channel in the brain called ventricle that the fluid is produced. The specialized structure within each ventricle called the choroid plexus that is responsible for the majority of the CSF production. So there is a lining that is the ependyma. This is the lining of ependymal cells, and these cells have some cilia and microvilli also, and these cells form the cerebrospinal fluid. Because it has a cilia, so it will circulate the cerebrospinal fluid, and it also having microvilli, so it will also absorb some CSF also. The brain normally maintains a balance between the amount of CSF that is absorbed and amount that is produced. However, disruption in this system may occur. What is the ventricular system? Ventricular system is divided into 4 cavities, and we can say the cavity that present inside the brain that is called ventricles, which are connected by a series of holes, or that holes is called foramen and tubes. 2 ventricles enclosed in the cerebral hemisphere are called the lateral ventricles. They each communicate with the third ventricle through a separate opening called the foramen of Monro. The third ventricle is in the center of the brain, and it's all made up of thalamus and hypothalamus. The third ventricle connects with the fourth ventricle through a long tube called the aqueduct of Sylvius. CSF following through the fourth ventricle follow around the brain and spinal cord by passing through the another series of openings. So this is all about the ventricle system. There are lateral ventricle, and then third ventricle and the fourth ventricle. Lateral ventricle that open into the third ventricle from the interventricular foramen, and third ventricle open into the fourth ventricle from the aqueduct of the Sylvius. So these are the structures. So if you want to see the all these ventricles, we can see here. This is the lateral ventricle, and below the lateral ventricle we can see third ventricle, and very last this is the fourth ventricle, and there is the cerebral aqueduct that connect each other, third and fourth, and the third ventricle and the lateral ventricle it is connected with the interventricular foramen, and we also call foramen of Monro. This is the neural tube, and we can say the forward part of the neural tube is responsible for the development of the brain. So we can see here 3 parts. This part is the forebrain. This part will develop the forebrain, and this middle part will develop the midbrain, and the last part that it will develop in hindbrain. We call hindbrain, and it will develop accordingly. Forebrain Again, we will divide into telencephalon, diencephalon. This is the telencephalon part we can see here, and this will develop into the cerebrum. Diencephalon, this part is called diencephalon, and it will develop into the limbic system. So we can see here limbic system is composed of many structures: thalamus, hippocampus, hypothalamus, and all these structures composed of the limbic system in the middle portion of the brain, and very compact structures, and that is developed from the diencephalon. If we want to see the midbrain, that is developed from the mesencephalon. Hindbrain again divided into two parts, metencephalon and melencephalon. And from the metencephalon, the cerebellum is developed from the metencephalon, and melencephalon, the spinal cord will be developed from this. So all the structure of the forebrain, midbrain, hindbrain, again they will split into some parts, and these parts again develop into some special parts of the brain. So we can see in this picture more clearly. This is the forebrain cerebrum. The most of the part of the brain is covered by the cerebrum. So sometimes if we say brain, it sometimes synonymously it is related to cerebrum alone. This is the limbic system, so there are more structures present here, and this is the midbrain, and behind the midbrain, this is the pons, and this is the spinal cord, and this is the hindbrain. We can say this is the cerebellum. Cerebrum, which forms the major portion of the brain, divided into two major parts, that is the right and left cerebral hemisphere. The cerebrum is term often used to describe the entire brain. A fissure or groove that separates the two hemispheres is called the great longitudinal fissure, and the two sides of brain are joined at the bottom by the corpus callosum. So corpus callosum is that thing that join two parts of the brain, that is the right and left. Corpus callosum connects the two halves of the brain and delivers message from one half of the brain to the other. Surface of the cerebrum contains billions of neurons and glia that together form the cerebral cortex. Cerebral cortex appear grayish brown in color and called the gray matter. What we call gray matter. So I have said to you earlier that the gray matter and the cortex in the brain, and also in the spinal cord, the arrangement will be opposite of each other. If spinal cord has the central gray matter and outer cortex, then in the brain it will go outer and the center. Gray portion will be go outside, and the outer portion of the cortex will come inside of the brain. The surface of the brain appears wrinkled. The cerebral cortex has sulky fissures and the bulges between the grooves called fugale. If you will see large grooves, that is called fissure, and the small groove sulky, and some bulges, that is called fugale. Beneath the cortex, connecting fibers between neurons form a white color area that is called white matter. The cerebral hemisphere have several distinct features. By locating these landmarks on the surface of the brain, it can effectively be divided into pairs of the lobes. Lobes are simply broad regions of the brain. So we have studied earlier there are many lobes: frontal lobe, temporal lobe, parietal lobe, occipital lobe. Each hemisphere has a frontal, temporal, parietal, and occipital lobe. Each lobe may be divided once again into area that serve very specific function. The lobes of the brain do not function alone, they function through very complex relationships with each other. So we can see here this is the cerebrum. This is the cerebrum. So this is the bulges, gyrus, and this is the sulci, and this is the major groove and cerebral fissure. Messages within the brain are delivered in many ways. The signals are transported along routes are called pathway. Any destruction of the brain tissue by any tumor or any injury from outside can disrupt the communication between different parts of the brain. This result will be loss of the function such as speech, ability to read, or ability to follow simple spoken commands. Message can travel from one bulge on the brain to another, from one lobe to another, from one side of the brain to another side, from one lobe of the brain to structures that are found deep in the brain, example thalamus, or from the deep structure of the brain to another region in the central nervous system. So all these structures, they will function very uh, harmoniously with each other. Touching the motor region on the right side of the brain would cause the opposite side or the left side of the body to move. Stimulating the left primary motor cortex would cause the right side of the body to move. The message for movement and sensation cross to other side of the brain and cause the opposite limb to move or feel a sensation. The right side of the brain controls the left side of the body and vice versa. So if a brain tumor occurs on the right side of the brain that controls the movement of the arm, the left arm may be weak or paralyzed. So we can see here the different parts: frontal lobe, parietal lobe, occipital lobe, temporal lobe, frontal lobes. The frontal lobes are the largest of the four lobes, responsible for many different functions. These include motor skills such as voluntary movement and speech, intellectual and behavior function. The area that produce movement in parts of body are found in the primary motor cortex or precentral gyrus. The prefrontal cortex plays an important part in the memory, intelligence, concentration, temper, and personality. The premotor cortex is a region found beside the primary motor cortex. It guides eye and head movement and a person's sense of orientation. Broca area, important in language production, is found in the frontal lobe, usually on the left side. Sorry. Occipital lobes. These lobes are located at the back of the brain and enable humans to receive and process visual information. They influence how humans process color and shapes. The occipital lobe on the right interprets visual signals from the left visual space, while the left occipital lobe performs the same function for the right visual space. There is an area in the frontal lobe of the left hemisphere that is called Broca area. It is next to the region that controls the movement of the facial muscle, tongue, jaw, and throat. If this area is destroyed, a person will have difficulty producing the sounds of the speech because of inability to move the tongue or facial muscle to form words. A person with Broca aphasia can still read and understand spoken language but has difficulty speaking or writing. Why? Because near the Broca area, there is the area that is responsible for the movement of tongue, facial muscles, and jaw thought. And if these area is damaged or injured. So all these movement will not happen, but the intake due to intact broca area, he will understand all the things, but he is unable to move all the things, all the facial muscles, root muscles, and tongue muscles. So he is not capable of speaking, cannot speak because all the muscles paralyzed. So he can understand, he can understand everything, and he can read, he can understand all the things you want to say, you want to speak, but he cannot produce sound. There is a region in the left temporal lobe that is called Wernicke area. Damage to this area causes Wernicke aphasia, and individual can make speech sound, but they are meaningless. So here, just opposite, because they do not make any sense. Wernicke area is one of the two parts of the cerebral cortex that are linked to the speech and other being broca area. Wernicke area is responsible for the understanding or making language, anything else, but the, this area is damaged. So whatever the intake muscle of throat, jaw and tongue, but he can produce sound, speech, but this speech is meaningless. So we can see here, this is the broca area and this is the Wernicke area. Parietal lobe, these lobe interprets simultaneously signal received from other area of the brain such as vision, hearing, motor, sensory and memory. Temporal lobes, these lobes are located on each side. So parietal lobes interpret signal received from other area of the brain such as vision, hearing, motor, sensory and memory. And whereas the temporal lobe is located on the brain at about the ear level, and on the both sides, one part is on the bottom of the each hemisphere and other part is on the side of each hemisphere. An area on the right side is involved in visual memory and helps humans recognize objects and people's faces. An area on the left side is involved in verbal memory and helps humans remember and understand language. The rear of the temporal lobe enables humans to interpret other people's emotions and reactions. So all this about the cerebrum, and we will study another class. We will remaining all the things we will study in another class. Thank you.